G'day guys, hope everybody is doing very well, especially in these turbulent times. So I decided to make another video based on what we've been seeing and a lot of things that are not being honestly conveyed to everyone, including President Trump. Even though he is seeing what's going on, I feel that a lot of things are still being played in a very political way, which is not really helping the people suffering right now. And that means all South Africans, not just white Afrikaners and Boere. We are seeing the country collapse, fall apart, over politics, over people squabbling over money, power and position, which is putting us all in a position where we are suffering. Businesses are suffering, people's families are suffering, people are not being fed. So I'd like to raise quite a few points today, and we're going to do two videos. So the first video I'm going to address some points that are about the topics we're talking about right now, which are quite important to address. So without further ado, I want to talk about a case that happened from 2005 through to about 2007, but I'd say 2007 it was actually discovered. So in 2005 there was a news article in the newspapers, and it was on the news, where a mortician, a black mortician, had been selling white human body parts as muti, magic muti, in other words for protection and luck, to criminals and people who were interested in buying body parts. Now imagine that was your family member laying in there being cut up and being sold, or just anyone as a matter of fact. How do we treat the dead? Where's our respect for the dead? Where's the ethos that says we respect the dead? None of that is being shown in this country specifically. And by the way, this practice still prevails today. Now this includes the same as with these farm attacks and farm murders, where a lot of these criminals take animal parts or animal blood to bless them. So they slaughter animals for very barbaric rituals to actually harm others. I mean, where in your mind can you say this is a good thing when you even slaughter animals to do harm, rob banks, do people in? And this is a problem we're facing. We really are facing this in a hard way. Okay, so that's a point I wanted to raise as a little bit of a shock factor so that the world knows this is what really happens in South Africa. That's why South Africans many times say you don't know this country until you've been here. Many people could look out from the outside and say there's beauty here and all that. That's true. Live here. Come see what it's like. And as many other foreigners, after 3 months in this country, they realize the definite shortcomings for everyone. All right. Next one I want to highlight on this whole story about people saying it's not genocide, there's no such thing as slow genocide. Again, I feel a lot of people are very ill-informed and are only following whatever is being put on the news or out in the media today. They're not following the history, they're not analysts, and I actually implore most of you to stay quiet on a subject you cannot speak of, please. Because it doesn't help you playing the politics and playing the media with everyone when you yourself have not got enough information, even as a person who's trying to help, to understand why we say what we say. Why there were people speaking out even from 2007, 2006, 1995, all the way up to where I was still involved in 2018 and 19 and 2017. So this is a slow, progressive, strategic genocide. Okay. Now I've heard Rob Hersov speak of this, and again, I'm always a bit confused as to where most of our people who are helping us, and I'm grateful for that, where they say there is no genocide, but there is. We're in the stages of it. And I'm going to mention something that was raised, and it was put in the news as well, where there were a lot of reports being done on statistics being snuffed out. So what's happening is, let me give you a very good example of a genocide alert of a war in this country. In 2015 to 2016, we had the US embassies alert US citizens here in South Africa working in the banks, working in a few places, to say you need to get home to the US. There's a strong possibility of genocide and war coming to this country. Now, I was one of the people who got that message because I worked with one person that was very high up with the embassies working in the banks, and he did work with the FBI and so on. Cannot say the name, unfortunately, because it is privacy. But this is a good example of how that message was already sent back then, and people are still saying there's no such thing as genocide. 100%. Make of it what you will. The next one is, we had the Genocide Watch alerts going off from about 2014 all the way up to 2019, where at that stage we were still using Stanton's standard, which was published in 1998, and the whole point there was to say we were about 7 out of 8. We were initially 6 out of 8, then we were 7 out of 8, then lockdown came. and it changed things, which is a whole nother story I have to share with you about what happened in lockdown. I have no care about what people say about the vaccine and so on, but I think it's important we highlight what was happening in that time. All right, so let me give you some cases. Cases not so long ago, probably about 4 years ago, where people say this is only happening on the farms. No, it happens in suburban areas, it happens in towns, and it happens even in secure estates, which is shocking to see some of the crimes happening, and these things are also being snuffed out. Dockets are disappearing. I myself have helped a rape victim try to get to the police station to get a docket that was she actually reported on. She gave a whole statement. When we came back, the docket was gone. That poor woman had to go through that multiple times to get her story reported, and still it never even reached the news. So again, take my word for it or don't, but these are cases actually happening. Then if we look at a case in Botswana, a nice resort out in Joburg side, where an old couple was attacked, the people who run the resort, and what they did was actually quite shocking. They attacked the old man, beat him half to death, raped his wife, beat her, and then urinated all over him multiple times. I think it was 4 or 5 perpetrators, and they fortunately survived. But imagine how scarred those people must be from that experience. Again, nothing stolen, just a message being sent for what? So yeah, I'm not going to unpack on that too much, but that's another case that we're not hearing and not getting out into the media. Nobody's seeing the light of day of that. And for their privacy, I'm not going to say their names, but it is a serious problem we're facing everywhere in this country. Next one is, and I watched the whole story unfold with Ramaphosa and Trump, President Trump, and I felt that, you know, Johan Rupert standing up there talking about how safely he sleeps and using drones and all of these things, when we actually got laws that were put into this country to prevent us from using drones, even by CPF members in different parts, different towns, to actually catch criminals and survey parks that are close to neighboring neighborhoods to see where the criminals are going to come through so they can get early alerts. Banned. Now we got laws coming out banning us from using CCTV, dash cams or cameras in public catching criminals. How is that enabling? How can the president say these things when they're taking away our capabilities to protect our people? I mean, can we think of the logic? Like now, for instance, this new bill coming out, taking arms away from security guards. Our last bastion. We are barely allowed to have arms on us. We're barely allowed to protect ourselves. As a matter of fact, there are many cases where the criminal gets shot and the criminal gets preferred over the actual victim, where we endorse criminality, it seems, and the poor victim gets the last piece of any kind of hope. So I'm not saying, you know, anyone's bad or good, but I'm saying that is bad. Now, if we look at taking away our capabilities to protect ourselves, how's that going to keep your children safe? How's that going to keep your own family safe? Of all races, not just whites, everyone. I am advocating here for the Afrikaner and the whites in general, yes, because let me be clear, we are not taking this crime to their doorsteps. We're not going into Tembisa, Alexandria, Mondio, or anywhere, and bringing a bunch of white people, raping, murdering, attacking, stealing, and destroying things. This is where I'm standing up and saying, hey, enough's enough. Yes, black on black crime is violent, it's ugly. Not even a couple of months ago, one of my friends had to witness a criminal being necklaced. But do you know what the savagery is? They pull out all the ladies, the children, everybody to come witness. They actually threaten their lives because a gang member wants them all to see what's going to happen to this criminal who hurt one of his family members. But this gang member doesn't care if it happens to your families. How hypocritical are we? Okay, next one. 2007, there was an instruction given by Africa and here in South Africa that stats on crimes must be lessened. So the reports that come out must be doctored essentially. Africa released a statement where they were getting way too many adverse medias on them about, for instance, there was one video that circulated worldwide of soldiers walking in a African country, literally shooting their own children for fun. Just walking, having a casual chat, and you see the child goes limp. Africa then said this is not good for business, this is not good for our country, and South Africa followed suit. So, reports on crimes were lessened. How do we live in any country where crimes are not reported, where we are not getting justice for the people that are affected by this? And people ask why there are vigilantes and why there is crime against criminals. It's because nothing is really being done. There are good cops out there, policemen and women fighting their bum off, sorry I swore there, to try and save us. but the majority of them are not doing anything. We've even got cases of 2 female policewomen selling weapons, confiscated weapons, to taxi drivers and to criminals. And you know what's being done to them? Nothing. Ongoing court cases, ongoing investigations, no immediate effects. Okay, so then we want to look at, for instance, there was another story, and this is a quite harrowing one, where, for instance, an old lady had a cleaning lady that worked for her. She was very old, and she passed away a little while ago, around 2010, 2011. The cleaning lady took the house as her own, didn't buy it, nothing. She lived in there, and the family till today are struggling to get her out of there. They can't sell their house, the electricity bill and the utility bills are going over 400,000, and these people are struggling because they will not remove this lady. And this lady is even renting out those rooms to illegal people so she can make money. Now the family has lost their granny, and they've lost their property. So we're saying expropriation without compensation isn't real. Well, the courts, without saying it, has not disabled that capability since long ago. Last point I want to speak on for today, and I'm just checking time here. So if we look at the experience with politicians, right, betraying their own people. When I watched that whole story with John Steenhuisen also speaking up and not really acknowledging the deaths and the suffering of people, actually playing the line, again, this confirmed that the DA is not here for anyone except themselves. And I do challenge the notion of what Rob said, that he would push to take over the DA with new leadership being pro-American. Okay, cool, great. But what happens when we realize that the entire Western Cape, not the entire, but most of the Western Cape is liberal and is very anti-Trump? We need to squash out that dissent to realize this is all for the greater good for all of our people, for everyone living there of every race. Not just because we're seeing the genocide, but if you have a bunch of people who's your enemy, how are you going to support them? And how are we going to change people's minds to work with each other? This is a serious issue. So we have to beware of who we trust in politics and in the media. I mean, me personally, I'm telling you everything I can from personal experience and what we need to do. So guys, we need to look at what's happening in this country, sort it out, and then take it from there. Thank you very much, guys. I hope you all have a wonderful day. And just remember, be careful of what you say on the media, because they will use that against everyone.